So the next panel or discussion we have is running Magento on the age of SaaS. This will be moderated by Brandon Urich, who is the client director at Rightpoint. The panel will include Mike Burns, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Bolt, Matthew Serwin, Senior Strategic Partnership Manager at Klaviyo, and then Robert Rand, Director of Partnerships and Alliances at JetRails. So let's take it away.
Hey everybody. I'm Brandon Urich. I'm client director at Rightpoint. Rightpoint is a full-service global experience agency. We specialize in e-commerce and the Adobe Commerce suite of products. And I'll let my panel do just a quick introduction of their platform that they work with.
I'm Matt Serwin. I'm with Klaviyo. We are a unified customer platform. We enable brands to have direct ownership over your data for speaking to your consumers. We have over 100,000 paying customers globally that we help with email and SMS and consumer marketing.
Hi, all. Mike Burns. I lead strategic partnerships and business development over at Bolt. And what we do there is we try to help merchants turn their guest shoppers into lifetime customers. The way we go about that is through the checkout and giving customers a really strong incentive and a super delightful experience to want to be known and pass those benefits as they move to other merchants with Bolt. So think of an Amazon experience that can just follow you across the web and across our merchant network.
And I'm Robert Rand. I head up partnerships and alliances at JetRails, and I'm host of the JetRails podcast. We are a mission-critical web hosting provider that focuses on taking web hosting into the realm of e-commerce in a way that's going to deliver on speed, security, scalability, reliability, cost optimization, all the things that a modern merchant is trying to achieve in having the right groundwork, the right infrastructure underneath their e-com site so that they can sleep well at night and they can focus on growth.
Okay, so today we want to crack open this topic of Magento in the age of SaaS. We're going to talk for about 20 minutes and we'll leave some time at the end for discussion if anybody has any questions. So let's start out by just saying there is a dynamic in the industry, SaaS, open source. We also hear things about monoliths, point solutions, headless. There's a lot of winds kind of changing in the industry, especially since 2020. We all have experienced that. So I want to kind of start. Robert, you're kind of our most technical person working in the infrastructure space. So can you give us just a quick, what's the difference between SaaS and open source, in case anyone's wondering?
I have an hour, right? That's so in short, I would look at it really as the playing field is. So you have SaaS platforms like Shopify and BigCommerce that provide a software as a service, a product that's already hosted, that you don't have access to the source code. It does what it does. You can do some things externally, but you don't particularly own your website. There's a lot of other interactivity that's happening. And then you've got the open source world where Magento, as we're here today, has really dominated when it comes to more established businesses that have a variety of different needs, that are more custom, that need more flexibility. And so it's giving you access to the source code to install it in an environment of your choosing, to own your website, own the data, and really have manifest destiny to customize and extend and be able to really decide your own roadmap with your e-commerce business.
Okay, so let's take a step back for a second. So between 2006 and 2010, you have the launch of Shopify, the launch of Magento. These two platforms kind of grew up alongside each other in two pretty different paradigms, open source and SaaS, really kind of, serving different market needs. you have a variety of different open source carts back then. Magento kind of took the lead. Shopify kind of did the same thing in the SaaS space, mostly in the SMB market, but they've been able to kind of move up market as well. You also have WordPress and that whole ecosystem, and WooCommerce came out of that. That's open source. And then you've got this dynamic of open source platforms, requiring a little bit more technical expertise, customizable, like you said, and then SaaS, kind of the value proposition is kind of easy plug and play and whatnot. So fast forward to 2020, it kind of feels like people aren't really talking about SaaS versus open source as much anymore. So Matt, I'm going to start with you. So Klaviyo has really kind of honed in on the e-commerce market with your email marketing, and now kind of a full suite of customer data products. So so my question is Magento still a significant part of your kind of go-to-market strategy, and what does that look like versus other platforms?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. We've actually put more of a renewed focus in the Magento space over the past year, and it's something that as we're going into planning for next year and beyond, it's continuing to hold that attention internally. And the big reason for that has been, as Klaviyo was purpose-built for modern e-commerce and Klaviyo being platform agnostic, we want to be able to work, in the way that anybody on whatever platform you're able to have and facilitate that. The reason that Magento is interesting is Klaviyo continues to grow and build out more feature functionality. Our focus on flexibility and being able to bring in custom properties, being able to work within a variety of types of merchants, really fits the Magento space. People use Magento because they want flexibility and customization, and their brands demand it. And so where we're trying to go goes directly with the philosophy behind the Magento community. So that's where, yes, we play very well in SaaS, which everybody is paying attention to today. But as we work with more brands that are becoming more sophisticated, the marriage of this and the technology really makes a lot of sense.
Got it. So, Mike, on the Bolt side, you guys are a SaaS checkout platform, right? So what does that look like from your perspective?
Not entirely SaaS, although we actually integrate with SaaS, PaaS, open source platforms. Our vision is one of a very decentralized technology stack that we think that's going to best fit the needs for flexibility and innovation in the years ahead. So we're building cartridges, modules, extensions. We're putting a lot of investment still in open source. You saw at Ritesh's keynote, Adobe recently released the quick checkout extension that's actually Bolt under the hood there that's powering that experience. So that's super important that we're able to, I think, meet the merchant where they are. Magento still is a very volume-wise significant portion of our merchant base. We see that continuing to grow, maybe not as fast as some of the SaaS platforms are, but from a sheer volume standpoint, it's super important for us.
So you all have kind of worked with a variety of different platforms. How are you seeing merchants succeed on Magento? Wants to take that one?
Well, I can jump in there. I think that what we've seen and maybe the elephant in the room is that there's a lot of market share that's gone to SaaS, and certainly in the SMB market. So having a Magento site that's going to be performant and that's going to be properly maintained and managed, it's very hard to compete with like a $29 a month SaaS opportunity. And so there are different market segments now, and so that's created a shift. But what we're seeing is that as you look at a more mature e-commerce business, a business that's doing millions of dollars in revenue, sometimes a lot more, that the benefits of the open source platform stand out, and that's where it comes down to taking advantage of those benefits. There are always new integrations coming around, and actually it's exciting to see some of the some of the Adobe commerce integrations that are coming, seeing things like the one-click checkout come through the Magento marketplace, seeing Walmart integrations. I know ShopRunner is on the horizon, and seeing a lot of new things there. But really, a lot of it's about what we're seeing out in the expo area of today's conference, and a lot of those opportunities to leverage best-in-class technology with your Magento site. The ability to, in some cases, and one of the big differentiators for a platform like Magento is the ability to have multiple storefronts, to deal with multiple parts of the world very elegantly with language and currency and things, to scale up your product catalog and be able to handle a lot of product variation, a lot of product customization, handle different business units for not just B2C but B2B, and do it well. The ability to turn your site into a multi-vendor marketplace and list other products from other sellers on your site. And so it really does depend on who the merchant is and what their target is and what they're looking at. But we find that during the 2020, 2021 era, that there was a big focus on just handling the overall growth in e-commerce. And now what we're seeing is taking advantage of all the methodology to optimize your site, to make it faster, to make it, improve user experiences, to better follow up with customers, increase that lifetime value. And so every business basically has to figure out their own way, their own path forward with that. But that Magento as a platform that you can really cater to those users, that you can really change that user experience more than other platforms. We see a lot of uniqueness, and I think that the flexibility is the strength.
So something that I've kind of realized working in the Magento Adobe ecosystem for the last 7-8 years. Back when like Magento 1 and Magento 2 early days, extensions were the big thing. So if you needed new functionality, you could go out and install a third-party extension. It added custom functionality to your site. It was kind of a turnkey thing that you installed, and now it's just code that's inside the platform. So that's kind of how the paradigm of Magento operated, which was different from like Shopify's of the world, where you just install an app and then it's kind of managed by a third-party app provider. That's kind of shifted a little bit really in the last several years, because a lot of the third-party providers are kind of becoming more like best-in-breed platforms and solutions in and of themselves. So what would you say kind of is, we've kind of got to this point where you have these systems coming alongside, like the Klaviyos and the Bolts of the world, that are coming alongside the platform to support specific functionality. What would you say is, an advantage or maybe disadvantage of bringing in like a purpose-built solution for a specific thing versus doing an extension or maybe a customization on the platform?
Yeah, I think today there's too much talent in these modern tools that are being produced that to be kind of bound by working with something that's predefined or trying to create something on your own, like you're doing yourself a disservice and doing your brand a disservice by doing that. You don't want to see what like some of these suites are doing, because a lot of times there'll be 10 tools that you're buying into, 2 might be world class, 8 are just not satisfactory for the strategies you're trying to deploy. And so yeah, I think keeping an open mind, building a tech stack based on what the brand actually needs, and picking the best-in-breed tools that integrate with the site is the way that everything is going. And you have to look at your competition at the same time. Like, are they outperforming you because they're willing to do it? And I know some of the pushback on doing that methodology is you don't want your team managing 10 different tools across different providers. You want to just go to the comfort of having a suite of tools, or just something that is an extension within a market. But at the end of the day, like what we see from the investment side of this is if you're doing that and putting the time into it, it's a bigger payoff, and it does give you a competitive advantage.
We work with a lot of merchants. We do custom development, custom integrations. We have significant development practice in that sense. So there's a place for customizations, obviously. I think the interesting thing from my perspective is you can bring these platforms to bear that provide really tailored functionality when you need a solution, rather than having to build it from scratch and maintain all of that. However, you do still have the flexibility to make customizations to the platform, maybe in a more surgical way that is not you trying to recreate the wheel and completely build custom software, but being able to kind of tweak that to really meet your business requirements if needed. You're not going to hit those roadblocks like you might on a platform that's kind of more locked down. And so some of your tools, it sounds like your solutions have really invested in kind of opening up the toolbox a little bit and allowing merchants to have some flexibility, maybe do some customizations, leveraging the capabilities of your platform if they want to go that route and not just use the out of the box as well.
Yeah. No, it's a big investment for us going forward too. Like, we've built out an entire developer experience team. We just released updated APIs. We're going to add more endpoints going forward, all to support exactly what you're saying. We want to enable customization, but we want to provide like the core solid dynamic for it.
Mike, you said, so Bolt launched a quick checkout in partnership with Adobe this year, right?
Yep.
That's kind of, can we just say that's kind of to compete with Shop Pay probably? and what's kind of the thought there, and what kind of the outlook on that, on Magento versus some of the other solutions in the market?
Sure. Yeah, and when we started, we were basically taking over checkout for every merchant. And it's hard. Checkout in itself is really hard, in all the different customizations and integrations that merchants wanted. And that works, and we still work with a number of merchants doing that today. But as we move and we're pulled further into the mid-market enterprise, to the Fanatics and Revolves of the world, they already had pieces and strategies for those surface areas that were really important to them. And that's where the kind of the extension, the composable approach, what we call embedded at Bolt, gives them the flexibility and the tooling to go a step further in that level of customization. I think that's like a parallel if you think of the journey your merchants are going to take, and kind of the journey that e-commerce has been on, where Amazon just was first set out and built this just best of breed experience for customers, very closed system. Shopify has since come in and done a fantastic job at giving merchants the ability to deliver similar kinds of experiences, but still a relatively closed experience and closed system. We're now moving in that next evolution of commerce, and this has happened in all major ecosystems as the technology takes off and growth takes off, and it becomes more important to the customer that they want more control, and they need more customization. And so we're kind of seeing this world of like, all right, now the third version of that e-commerce iteration is this more decentralized, more open experience. You're even seeing some SaaS providers actually talk. I was at the Big Commerce Conference a couple of months ago, and they were open SaaS was the word in the phrasing they were using pretty repeatedly. So I suspect you're going to see a whole lot more of that.
Yeah, is Shopify becoming the new monolith? I mean, they keep adding all these features to their platform. Magento, Adobe specifically, has kind of laid out their roadmap of doing more of a microservices approach. Can you maybe speak to what that means, and what the shift in that approach looks like for the ecosystem?
Well, personally, I think that we've been seeing evolution for a long time, and keeping in mind that it's certainly nothing new to see folks coming in on the payment, on the checkout page and bringing in hosted checkout or sales tax management via a SaaS platform, or shipping management or other things, or reward point programs and loyalty programs, or site search or other things on top of an open source platform or in conjunction with an open source platform like Magento. In the last few years, we've all been watching the move to go in a more headless fashion, and whether it's Adobe's PWA Studio, or whether we're talking about newer themes and things like Hoova, there's so many different directions that you can take, and this goes back to figuring out for each business what the optimization strategy is. But I think that it really is a bit of a marriage between being able to manage that core and extend and build things that are more precise. And so when I think about how are we comparing with something like Open SaaS it's funny that I think that the value proposition in the traditional SaaS platforms has been being more turnkey, simpler to work with, and as they open up into, and maybe it's the opposite. Maybe instead of there becoming the monolith to not being the monolith and offering headless solutions and offering other things, that the simplicity goes away, and that now you need React developers and different people to be, anytime you want to make a change, anytime you want to do something, where in a community like Magento that traditionally you've had more of a strategy around the tech stack and managing it. So it's hard to give one clear direction on where all that's going. But if I were to look at Adobe Commerce and microservices, I think that there is a customer that is looking to be able to pull a lot of things into that more SaaS model, where it's managed and you can interact via APIs, and other externalized methodology. But the same way that we haven't seen mass adoption of things like PWA Studio, a lot of the market is looking for something more akin to what Magento has been and is today. Looking for that monolith, and that's part of why we heard earlier today that there's still there's still a renewed understanding and direction with Adobe that that Magento as an open source platform and as the monolith continues forward. So I think that what we're seeing though is just some divergence, that you're going to have different product offerings that suit a different use case, not necessarily that it's an all or nothing, not that all of Magento goes to microservices or all of it, stays monolith. And in some cases, I think part of the challenge is that we are in uncharted waters, which is typical for tech. How many microservices is too many? How many is too few?
Right.
How many different developers do you need to know each microservice and to be able to have expertise in it, to be able to really make it shine and interact with it well? So I do think it's going to take some time to really fully see how that market moves in those different directions, but I feel really confident about Magento as a monolith, acting in a really powerful way. And if anything, we've seen under Adobe's guidance a slimming down of the core to make management and maintenance of the platform easier and simpler and more cost effective, taking out some of the core bundled or vendor bundled extensions, things like that. So I think that back to this morning's opening, that there are some concentric circles between what Adobe Commerce is seeking to achieve and the customer base that it's seeking to service, and Magento open source, and they're not there's not perfect overlap there. So if anything, I see them as different products.
The breaking of kind of the Adobe's focus of kind of breaking those products out a little bit and making it easier to manage is an interesting dynamic. So Rightpoint did a study recently. We'll be releasing a research report here in a couple weeks, that we surveyed 250 e-commerce merchants across the industry, not just our clients, doing over 10 million in annual revenue, and 55% of those were in the survey response, 55% of those were on an open source platform, 40% were on a subscription-based platform, SaaS platform, and less than 5% were doing some type of headless setup. So I thought that was an interesting kind of look at the landscape based on that sampling. And yeah, you're right. As some of these platforms, these SaaS platforms that are supposed to be easier to maintain, move into potentially looking at things like headless in order for them to be able to be more flexible, then you bring on the need for heavier development expertise. I think a lot of us on Magento in that world are kind of already used to that paradigm and how to kind of manage that type of a tech stack. So maybe there's an advantage, that you're kind of ahead of the curve on that. So kind of in closing it out, and we'll open it up for questions. Obviously you are all here at Meet Magento New York. Maybe if each one of you could just share real quickly, why you're investing in the Magento community and the Magento ecosystem, and what you kind of see as a strategic advantage for merchants on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on it today. Over the last 2 years, we've seen this rapid acceleration within e-commerce. And with that acceleration comes sophistication. Brands are getting more sophisticated. Strategies need to get more sophisticated. Magento provides the flexibility for brands to do that. We believe at our core that that flexibility is important from Klaviyo. So it is a really nice alignment that we can have as we want to provide more powerful tools and customization that aligns directly with what goes on in the Magento community.
Just super quick story. Before I joined Bolt, I was at Amazon, and I was working on our zero-click commerce initiative, which essentially we're taking signals from devices that are in your home today that are already connected, marrying that with AI and Alexa to anticipate what you're going to need to buy, and in fact buy it on your behalf before you ever, without you ever having to make a choice as a consumer. So the way we looked at it at Amazon was the website and the app is friction. That's how, that's what we're competing with. Like, let that sink in. That's where the puck is moving. It's still early days on that. But the idea of friction for the customer in your personal experience, like, you've just got to be super aggressive about rooting that out. And then, work back from that customer experience when you think about your platform choices and your use of open source and what's going to give you the most flexibility, because the friction can be in different places. We help merchants with it on the checkout side, but it can be other areas of your experience. But if you're, kind of the counterweight to SaaS and others is you're sort of outsourcing your development in some ways to the major providers, and just make sure you're really confident that you're going to be able to build some differentiation in your experience and removing that friction by doing so versus keeping up with the Joneses, if you will, because it's with the cookie apocalypse and the changes of Facebook and others, and it's going to be harder to stand on just brand alone. You really have to start diversifying and differentiating your experiences in the shopper journey.
I think the overall takeaway I'm hearing is like Magento provides you that flexibility when you need it. There's also really great solutions out there that you can bring to bear, and the marketplace and the ecosystem has really gotten to a place where there's a lot of great tools to leverage for merchants. Having that layer of flexibility and capability and power, is also great for scalability and growth. Let's open it up for any questions real quick before we wrap up here. Anybody have any questions?
So just to kind of keep up with time as well, they will be available after the session, so please meet up with them at lunch or across the marketplace. But if there are no questions, I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and we will be going to the next session in 2 minutes.
All right.
Thank you.